Hey, 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 and welcome to this week's edition of Terry Messenger's Genius Zone. Did I say messenger? Oh my goodness. Wow, that must be a sign that it's going to be a very good telecast because I've just been backstage with a glorious woman. Now, I believe a lot of you are going to really resonate with this because have you ever felt like, you cannot be everything you want to be and you have to play it small because there have been other people's voices that have been really telling you who you are and even causing you to feel misunderstood. So if you feel you've been told by the world about your life and you've been shrinking yourself to dilute just to fit in, then you're going to want to watch this episode because this amazing woman that I'm about to bring on, not only is she going to talk you through the power of how to step into your full aligned self, but she's going to give you some key principles through a very powerful DNA blueprint called human design. So I love speaking to this lady. She is going to give a demonstration towards the end, so you're not going to want to run away. This woman comes from the corporate coaching space, or she comes from the corporate space, and she is a little bit unique in the sense that she was raised by a mother who really taught on self-love, and that was something that really shaped this delightful, intuitive human design coach. So with no further ado, let me bring on a lady that was also very impacted, like Anthony Robbins, by Jim Rohn. And I give you the delightful Katherine Leonardos. How are you, Katherine?
Hello, Terry. I'm great. How are you?
I'm good, but I'm not pronouncing names very well this evening for some reason. So
I think spirit is just, yeah, we have a bit of, some spirit coming in. It's Katherine Leonardos.
Katherine Leonardos, how are you on this beautiful evening?
I am so wonderful and I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
It is an absolute pleasure. Now, you are also in this side of the world. So can you tell us where you are?
I'm in Melbourne, in Australia.
And that is, as you found out, that is where I was born. So I was actually born in Melbourne.
Yes, in Box Hill.
Yes, there you go. So we know all of that about each other, and yet we barely know each other, really, other than the fact that you are about to really expound on a topic that I believe a lot of people, in fact, everybody needs to hear. So I'm going to start off with the first question, and that is that you went into human design, into the mastery of it, and, completing your masters. What was the inspiration that caused you to know that you needed to choose human design?
Once I understood myself and my own design, human design, and really understood my authentic self and who I was, I realized that a lot of people just needed to know this about themselves. And I've always wanted to help as many people as I can. And, I'm intuitive and, do readings and I help people in that way and loved ones connect who have passed over. But I just felt that there was actually something more that I could offer people. And when I came across human design and I understood the impact it had on me, and it was like an awakening, it was like coming home to myself, I thought, my gosh, I really want to share this with other people and help other people. So it was the impact that it had on me when I realized how massive this is and how impactful it is on other people, which is why I chose to pursue it.
And isn't it interesting how so many of us are playing smaller than what we could, or we're kind of holding back in a fear of rejection because we are afraid of being judged, or we're afraid to fail, or we're just not wanting to be all of who we are and being misunderstood. I can really relate to that. I feel like that was my second personality, being misunderstood. And yet, the genius zone, what that tells us is that all the things that we suffered in our life and the things that really impacted us the most turn into our superpower. So,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah. So let's talk about your journey, finding out and discovering that you are the manifesting generator. We'll also, first, I think what we'll do just to frame this is I'm going to give you the floor to talk a little bit about human design, because there may be some people out there that do not even know what it means. So I feel that it would be very good to frame this by talking about a little bit about where it comes from and what it means to understand your human design, and just share with us so that we can frame this up so that people can look into it, do their research, and even change their life like you have.
Yes. So human design was actually discovered by a gentleman called Ra. I always get this name wrong. Like we were talking about names before. So Ra Uruhu, and he actually experienced this. Oh no, I think I did a good job.
Ra Uruhu. My goodness, I can't say it.
And he actually received this, what we would call a download, and it channeled this through when he was in Ibiza in Spain back in 1987. And since then, human design is really nowadays it's known as the modern day personality tool. So and it basically it's a blueprint of your actual human design of your personality, and it helps you understand the type of energy, your energy type, also your strategy, which is basically how best to flow in your life and make decisions, and your authority, which is actually the way you make decisions. So it's actually, it can be, there's so much in human design. I mean, I could spend an hour and a half just going through the basics of human design with a client, and then I can also spend, I could probably talk about it for 5 hours. There's so much in your chart. So it actually, each individual has an actual personal blueprint. So it's an individual chart, and it actually is based on your birth date, the time of your birth, and the place of your birth. And then that's when this chart is created. And the accuracy is incredible of this chart. Once you actually start to go through, once I start the readings with people and I start to explain what I'm seeing, my clients are like, oh my gosh, how do you know that? How do you know that? That's so accurate. How do you know that? And I'm like, because it's in the blueprint.
And, like Wayne Dyer says, to know thyself, that has got to be the most powerful thing. So would you say it is influenced through astrology?
Yeah, it's a combination of I Ching, astrology, Kabbalah, and actually science too, modern day science as well. So it's a very unique personality tool, and the way it's combined, and it's the accuracy, as I mentioned, is just it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal, and what it really helps people come back to their authentic self. So from society, we are conditioned to be certain things, to believe that we are a certain way. Also, we're conditioned to do things according to what we should do and what the right thing to do. And, people like other people's opinions and how other people perceive us as opposed to who we actually are. So human design actually helps us to remove these layers and layers of conditioning that we have accumulated over time in our lives and actually come back to ourselves. And it's so incredible that when you actually come back to yourself and you stand in your power, you experience that joy that, a lot of us are looking for joy and happiness. And it actually, with human design, when you actually peel back those layers and really find yourself and step into that person, the joy just comes naturally. It's beautiful to see.
That is absolutely incredible. And what I'm really hearing is a couple of things just to break down what you said. And that is, Ra Uru Hu, and I'm definitely not saying his name right, had a download, a transmission. And this is something that I heard is when we have an idea, it is actually given to us above at a much higher level. And an idea means that we can run with it. And obviously, if you're an activist, likely, like someone like yourself and even myself too, if we feel intuitively inclined, we probably will action it. And those ideas, if we don't action it, it will be given to somebody else. So it's really important to, number one, know thyself. Number two, understand that ideas are not just rainbows and butterflies. Sometimes these are the principles that create the complete system of having an incredibly successful life. And, it's all wrapped up in quantum physics. And it's a system, like you have said, and I'm just paraphrasing it here, which is a roadmap for your soul. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to explore over the energy types. So we have manifestors, generators, manifesting generators, projectors, reflectors, and each has a unique strategy and aura. And how did it change your life understanding that you were a manifesting generator as opposed to perhaps before you knew that? And maybe there's a story, which I believe, where you doubted yourself because other people were putting their own little opinions on you. Do you want to talk us through that?
Yes, I'd love to, because again, that's why I love human design so much. I'm a manifesting generator. I'm somebody so a manifesting generator will talks quickly, loves lots of variety. They love to do lots of different things. We're known as time benders because we quantum leap so quickly, because we take so much action so quickly. I was always someone who people did not understand because I would change my mind often. That is one of the traits of a manifesting generator. I would say, oh, I'm going to do this, and then I change my mind, because we manifesting generators don't stick to things if they don't feel aligned. So they may start something, but they will stop if it's not aligned. They're not thinking that they're bored. It's just, because we actually get bored very easily and very quickly because we love all this kind of variety and we're always on the go. So I was often criticized that I didn't focus. I wasn't focused, that I changed my mind often, that I sometimes even that I couldn't sit still, because we are on the move and we just love that variety and we do get bored easily. So that's the social conditioning that I had. In fact, somebody once asked me if they thought that I had ADHD. And I was really taken back, and I said, but why? And she said, because you can't focus. And I said, well, I can, because if it's something that gives me joy and something that I'm loving and it's interesting and it's giving me that variety and it's fast paced, I love it. So, but if it's boring and it's not in alignment with something that I like to do, then I will quickly swap and change. So that again, just understanding that about myself, I realized there's nothing wrong with me. These are my superpowers.
Yes, I love that. And you discovered I'm also a manifesting
Yes.
generator too. So being misunderstood, actually changing my mind and recognizing that I was doing that, but not really understanding why, that even at this level where I am today has really opened up that awareness, because I feel that when we know about ourselves and when we understand the reason we are the way that we are, that has got to be a breakthrough in itself. But you are dealing with a lot of people that are, making decisions or maybe thinking that they are something when they're not, or misunderstood. You're dealing with a lot of people like that who quite often feel suppressed by the world. And what happens when you are in that pace and you are wanting to go ahead? Because I know that there's a lot of people out there that they want to make decisions about their life. They might want to change their job. They may want to change their partner. Some of them can be massive decisions. And yet, they can quite often be crowded by other people's opinions.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that? Because, I understand that in some ways you've got to be very careful about who you share your soul with in terms of the things that you want to achieve in your life. Like if you want to go out there and you want to be a famous poet, sometimes it's not a good thing to share that with a lot of people, because that's when it can dampen your spirit. That's when it can really hold you back. But you had a story about someone who was able to stand up and say, actually, this is what I wanted. And, can you talk us through that? Because
Yes.
I feel that from a young person who, wanted, there may have been an expectation to move in this direction, but they were able to move in that direction that they wanted. What would you say about that? And can you open that up for us?
Yeah, look, I'd love to talk about that. I do have a situation. It's actually about my daughter, and she won't mind me speaking about her because it's very significant. Her energy type is a manifester. Now, the manifestors are here to make big change. They initiate. They don't wait for anyone. They don't wait for permission. They know what they want to do. They know where they want to go, and they go. And my daughter wanted to be a dancer from very young. She's actually a very talented dancer. She's been dancing on cruise ships for the last 19 months, and she came home quickly, and then she's about to go again. But when she was growing up, she was very misunderstood because she was basically telling us that she wanted to dance. And of course, I wanted her to go to uni and get a corporate job because I was from the corporate world. And she really kept pushing it that she wanted to go dancing and become this dancer. In the end, I gave in. I did eventually give in, but there was a lot of resistance, and she put a lot of people off, her father and I, and other people during that time. Once I discovered that she was a manifester, and I actually sat with her and I went through her chart, and I said, you are here to create change. You are here to do big things. You are here to change, actually, not have a linear life and really change the world. And the key to her strategy is actually to inform. So rather than getting us offside, manifestors, their key to have a flowing life is actually to inform the people who are affected by their decisions that they're making these decisions. And they're not actually asking for permission. They're actually saying, look, I'm just letting you know, this is what I've decided to do. I'm not asking for your permission, but it does affect you, so I'm just letting you know. When they do that, they're actually faced with less resistance. So when we talk about sort of living an aligned life as opposed to an unaligned life, which leads to lots of exhaustion and burnout because people are constantly against you, this is the key. So and it was interesting because once my daughter actually understood that this is her human design, and for her, because she's always worried about pushing back and having people against her, once she understood that, oh, if I just inform people what I'm doing and I don't need to ask for permission, I saw her face change, and she's actually implemented that new strategy in her life. And she said to me recently that she's just so much more at peace, and I can see how much more peaceful she is. And in her relationships, with her friendships, and of course with me. So it's life changing.
Yes, Mel Robbins' little saying is coming to my mind here, and I feel that you are really living by a lot of some of the greatest philosophies of, you know, some of the greatest people like Jim Rohn, who inspired your life as he did lead Anthony Robbins as well. And of course, Mel Robbins is a really big name today, but she says, stop hitting the damn snooze button on your life and start owning who you are.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what your daughter did. So you must be extremely proud. So yeah, so let's talk about some of these other human design elements and characteristics. So what do you believe is the difference between, say, a manifesting person like your daughter, a manifestor, and say someone who is completely the opposite? Which one would you say is the opposite? So I'm just sort of...
Yeah. So a manifestor is, so we've explained a manifestor with my daughter. So she's here she's not here to ask for permission. She's not waiting. She's here to, she just inform. This is what I'm doing. Lots of energy, lots of just big plans and a fast mover. So when you think about a manifestor, that they're manifesting what they want, they move fast. Then I would say the opposite of that, what comes to mind is a projector. So the projector energy type is actually someone who they actually have limited energy. A projector is only really, when it comes to the energy, they only have sort of certain amounts of energy. So they will go for a few hours and then need a break. I love projectors. I have many projector friends and people in my circle. So they're the wise guides. They're here to actually share their wisdom with others. So they have a lot of wisdom that they've learned in their life, and they're here to share it with others. But the key to a projector is to wait for the invitation. So that is that they want to help everybody because they have all this information and all this wiseness that they want to share. But the key is in order to actually help people, and also to be mindful of their energy and not just give out the energy to everybody. They need to wait for that invitation. By that I mean, you can say, hey, Terry, I know about this subject and you mentioned about it. If you're interested in finding out more, let me know. As opposed to, oh, Terry, I'm here to tell you this and this and this and this. And they're basically giving almost unsolicited advice and putting people off. And also using up energy that they don't quite have. And so that's where they become exhausted and become burnt out. So an aligned projector is actually someone who would wait for that invitation and wait for someone to come back and say, hey, Katherine, you mentioned the other day about this subject. I'd like to know more. Do you have, can we talk about it? And so, if I have the energy to do so, I will. So that's where I would see the opposite between a manifestor and a projector. I would see those two.
And yet they would be really compatible to work together or being very good friends. And, it really struck me as you were talking about that when we also understand that is who we are. So the projector has that very different wisdom. They have a very different energy. It's not much use for that person to try to be something that they're not. And how many of us are really doing that at the moment? We're doing courses even. We're spending thousands and thousands of dollars trying to learn how to be like this and this and this, when in fact we need to really honor who we are in a really, really big way. Because, you know, if a projector is trying to be a manifester, that's going to burn so much energy. And then we've got the reflector. Can you tell me about the reflector?
Well, the reflector, they're only 1% of the population, so they're very, very unique. And the thing about reflectors is when you look in a body graph, and even if you have time to have a look at a body graph, you will see that there are centers, almost like the chakra system. You know, like there's 7 chakras, but there's actually in a body graph there are 9 centers, and they're basically our energy centers. So when they're closed, they're called defined, and that's when we have our energy is actually our energy is comes from within. And then when they're open, it's actually that we receive our energy from outside. So a reflector has all open centers. And I actually was at a retreat last week where I did meet a reflector, and it was quite a special moment because you don't come across them that often, being 1% of the population. And this woman said that what happens with these open centers is that they absorb energy from everywhere from outside. So, and a reflector actually needs to wait when they're going to make a big decision. They actually need to wait for 28 days, a lunar cycle, to feel all the feels and absorb all the energy and just get the ideas and feel the emotions and you know, feel the pressure and the stress and go through all of that, and to actually be able to make a decision like that, a big decision. And I did ask this reflector, you know, is that the case with you? And she said, absolutely. And even just for the retreat, it took her 2 months to decide whether she was going to accept and go to the retreat. She said she actually understands that she feels the feels and she needs to go through all of the emotions and all the ideas, all of the thoughts, and process the whole thing and go through a whole process system and then go yes or no. It's incredible.
That is. And can you imagine how many people would have called, you know, a reflector a procrastinator?
Oh, 100%. Yes.
This is what's important.
That's right. She takes so long to make up her mind. Exactly.
And so when you understand that that is your human design, then you can really revere yourself. And I feel that revering and respecting and surrendering to, you know, who you are plays such a massive part. Now, this next one that I'm going to touch on, I feel is going to really be quite a controversial situation, even though you may have just described it as riding the emotional wave. But this is another element of where people can quite often jump to conclusions. And I'm thinking, because of the emotional roller coaster, some people may get tricked into thinking that they're bipolar even, or, you know, diagnosing themselves, just like you said about the ADHD. And this is where I feel human design is going to rule out so many false analysis on diagnosing yourself. But let's talk about the emotional wave and the rise and fall, and, you know, how you implement this technique of pressing pause.
Yes. So the emotional wave, when I first understood the emotional wave, I remember feeling a sigh of relief, because I thought, so I'm not bipolar, because I have an emotional authority, which is the emotional wave. So the authority in human design is how we best make our decisions. And there are seven different authorities. The emotional wave, the emotional authority, is a very common authority, and that's the one that I have. And what happens is you have these highs and these lows. And you need to ride this emotional wave before you actually make a decision. So we always say to wait to when it's time to make a decision, ride the emotional wave. And when you get to that emotional neutral place, that's when you make the decision. So we have these highs. Oh, I'm on top of the world. Yes, so Terry, would you like to come to Saturday night to a concert with me? I've got some tickets and it's Monday. And you go, yeah, absolutely. I feel fantastic. But then you haven't had a look at your calendar. You forgot that you have a Tuesday night dinner and you're actually presenting on Thursday, and then Friday night it's your anniversary. You're describing your week. And then there's an anniversary dinner and there's a family function and there's somebody's birthday, and then it's Saturday night. You go, oh my gosh, what was I thinking saying yes? So then you regret that decision. So another example is when you actually feeling quite low. We all have feelings of feeling low. And in fact, it was only a few weeks ago that I had this low on a Sunday, and I was feeling fabulous on the Saturday. And I remember feeling really down and out on the Sunday thinking, what on earth is wrong with me? It was just my emotional wave, and I just had to go through it. And when I woke up on Monday, I was back in an emotional neutral place. So these are the things that we, depending on your chart, that I can see in your chart, and these are the things that I explain as I go through the chart, so that you actually understand yourself. And again, that when you know yourself, you understand there's nothing wrong with me. I know now I have this emotional wave, so I just ride my wave through it, as opposed to why am I like this? You stop asking the why, and you understand yourself. And when you understand yourself, you're patient, and you just know that you just need to get through this to get to the next stage.
Because the why question, when you're asking it in a way that, where there's a crisis or there is something that is not right, there's chaos in your life, or, you're just going through those moments of challenges, by asking why, it takes you deep into a rabbit hole. It's more about asking what is the purpose for me in all of this? And imagine if you could actually understand that. I'm going through this emotional wave. I just have to ride it. And you did touch on something that really hit me between the eyes, backstage. And that is that you talked about how you do, coach people to just pause and wait before they act. And I know that sometimes I'm an activist, so I have that, okay, thinking on the spur of the moment and act. But you mentioned it in the way of emails, and I often think of it like almost like hitting the button to a bomb. And sometimes you can write an email and then hit that button and realize, oh my gosh, what have I just done?
Yes.
So, yes. So what do you say to people? How do you bring people in and ground them?
So I have one of my clients is a manifesting generator, she does also like me, and she moves quite quickly. And she also has the emotional authority, which means that she has this emotional wave. And when we started working together, she said, look, I just want to be less emotional and not respond so quickly. And so what I taught her in her human design, her strategy is to wait to respond. So I explained to her that she needed to, when she would receive an email that upset her, and usually it's in a work environment, I'd say to her that, so once, okay, read the email, right? Okay, breathe. We wait to respond. We're at this emotional, well, I would say high because she's quite upset and quite emotional and potentially going to say something she's going to regret or write something she's going to regret. And I say, and then I've taught her to wait and breathe and not respond, walk away, do something else, think about it, and then walk back to that email a little bit later. If not, the even better scenario is wait till that afternoon or the next day and respond back. And once she started to do that, life is so much better for her. She's finding that people are actually noticing that she's calmer. She's less responsive. So when she responds, she's a lot nicer in the way that she responds. And you can tell she's not as frustrated. So her frustration isn't coming out, because it was basically she's reading that email, she's seeing red, she's frustrated, and she's just responding. Whereas by waiting, thinking about it, waiting for that emotional neutrality, and then responding in a calmer way, in a calmer position, she's responding in a better way. She's not putting people offside. And actually, she's also realizing, she said, some of it is not as bad as what she thought it initially was. So it's made a massive difference in her life, and people have noticed at work, and actually her relationships have improved as a result.
Wow, that's I'm going to definitely pay attention to that. I don't think I've ever regretted once saying to myself, you know what, that email where I'm going to fire that person, whether they're firing them as a friend or a person or whatever, I'm going to wait until morning, and then I'm going to make that decision to whether or not I send it. But I think there's a lot of power in that, and
Yes.
I've never regretted once doing that and actually waiting and changing the state, because I mean, even in NLP, we know everything is about state. So like what you mentioned, go off, have a walk, make a coffee, go and do something. That's changing your state. It's changing your body. It's changing your positioning. And it's like, even when something's not working, you'll have a technical fault and you won't be able to get it. And the more you get locked into it, the worse it seems to get. But then you take yourself out of the position. You probably turn it off and then turn it back on again, and voila, magic happens. So these things are just so incredible. Now, obviously, what we're going to do is we are going to put Katherine's details in the show notes. So if you would like to know, and I mean, knowledge is power, especially when you action it, right? So if you want to know your human design, this is the lady that you really do need to speak to. If you've spent a lifetime feeling misunderstood, or you've been shrinking yourself, this is the lady that you really need to speak to, because, this is game changing. So what I'm going to do now is go to the part that I've been looking forward to in the whole show. Now we're going to give the audience a little bit of an illustration about how knowing your human design can really help you in your life. So behind the scenes, you asked me some questions, and then you discovered that I was exactly like yourself, a manifesting generator.
That's right.
So I'm now going to hand over to you, because maybe there's some things that will help me in my life that I know that about myself. Could you perhaps walk me through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the questions that I asked, Terry, were what I needed: the date of birth, the time of birth, and the place of birth. And I have a little program that I sort of quickly. I usually do. By the way, I usually do a little bit more preparation, but just but just from a snapshot, I could clearly see, as a manifesting generator, obviously being one myself, I did expect you to be one, Terry, in all honesty, because I could see that you do a lot of things at once. You can see that you're someone who loves a lot of variety. You're definitely a doer. You're doing lots of different things. I watch you on Facebook, and I can see the amount of things that you're doing. Variety is very important to you. You're someone who, again, you're definitely someone who is a time bender. You would have, in your career, I would say that you have quantum leaped many times and moved forward in a fast pace. Would that be correct?
Oh, 100%. And I seem to be, and I wonder if this has got anything to do with the human design too. I seem to thrive when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And I can actually expound some pretty astronomical energy.
Yeah, yep. And actually, if I just quickly look back at your chart, the reason why you are like this is you have a defined root center in your chart, and with someone who has that defined root center is actually someone who copes very well under pressure and does things very quickly at the last minute. So you've got this amount of work that you need to do, and you've got a deadline, and you will just get it done, and you thrive in that environment. So that doesn't surprise me at all. It's very clear in your chart.
That's I'm like a uni student, you know. I and I run to the finishing line. And that's so true. And I operate so much better. But
Yes.
maybe I would have told myself, and I have, if I'm going to be honest, a lot of mistruths about myself. Oh, I'm disorganized, I'm this, I'm that.
Yeah.
And all of those seeds of doubt. And this is why I can't emphasize to people that by knowing who you are and why you do the things that you do, or it's an explanation of the way that you roll for life. But I do have a question for you as well, which I'm extremely interested to know. And it may have nothing to do with human design, but I'm going to ask it anyways. And that is that when you're going through, you know, those chapters of your life, and let's face it, you know, our life is like a book, and you've got different chapters. And, you know, I must admit, I was going through status quo for a very, very, very long time, up until last year. And it was almost like the end of 23, early 24. And then it's like we hit the road running, and there was so many challenges that I had to overcome. But every single one of them has kind of prepped me and sharpened my, I guess, my genius zone. No pun intended for the show here. But it's brought out who I am, even though there are some massive crises going on. You know, my strength as an advocate and the many challenges that I've faced, where I've got to come up, you know, with people and suddenly speak my truth and do the absolute opposite of shrinking back. Here's my question. Is that kind of determined in my human design chart? Has that got anything to do with it? Or is that just life?
Look, I can actually see from your profile, you've got a line, there are two lines, so it's a 4-6. Your first line, which is the 4, is what you see in yourself, and that's actually the opportunist. You're an amazing networker. You use your networks your networks are really important to you, and you use your networks in bringing out all of your skills and all of your talents, and that's so obvious in the work that you do. Then your line 6, actually, which is your second line, which people see in you, you're actually a role model. Now, that doesn't surprise me at all, and it probably doesn't surprise you. And anybody who's working with you or watching this, you can clearly see, Kerry, that you are this amazing role model with all of this experience and knowledge that you're actually sharing with others. So with a line 6, it's quite unique. It comes in 3 stages, and from over the age of 50, you actually are you really step into your role model status, where you are actually sharing all of your knowledge and all of your experience with people. And so for you, it's within your networks. And so you're actually just really stepping into your power, and everything that's happened to you in your life, it is really just continuing to add to your experience and your knowledge that you can share and help other people. So as challenging as some of the experiences have been, I'm sure you're actually being able to help others, and by sharing that knowledge, you're actually impacting thousands of people. I'm quite confident with that.
Well, look, thank you so much, because that's what this show is all about, literally. It's about, you know, being an ambassador for the pain that each and every coach, healer, and leader has gone through and turning that into your power. And I have to say, there is a leader in all of us. So on that note, it's, if you can understand your human design, and you can have someone as incredibly wise as Katherine to actually lead and guide you through that process, so you can come to know who you are. You can understand yourself, so that you come into this incredible acceptance, rather than letting people say, oh, you've got ADHD, or you're a procrastinator, or you can't do this, or you can't do that. All of those stories suddenly become null and void, and you can rise in your power. So I'm going to conclude with the question that I ask every single person that comes onto the show, and that is, for your person, and that you're dealing with people that are inclined to move into that burnout, and probably because they're very highly integral people, they're very committed, they're very passionate, but it's almost because of that they put themselves into that position of burnout. And they're also very misunderstood. So I would like to ask you the question, because we don't want you to go off the show and then think, oh, I would have loved to share that. What is something that you can either perhaps reiterate that you've already said, or something you'd really like to put out there to the audience that is going to be tuning in and who is tuning into this show right now?
I am passionate about people actually coming back to themselves and finding their true authentic self, and just coming home to themselves, and just really stepping in their power and understanding who they are, and removing all of that conditioning that society has put on them, and just be yourself and love yourself and be really proud of the person that you are. And really, let's stand up and go, yes, this is who I am, and I love it. And that's really what I do with my clients. That's the impact that I want to make on the world. I just want everyone to be able to find their joy living in their true authentic lives, a true authentic life, living in their true authentic selves. That's what I'm really wanting to do.
Wow, that's amazing. So if you're ready to step into your true authentic self, no shrinking back, and totally owning yourself, then jump into our show notes, check out where you can get hold of Katherine, and remember your life. You've only got one life here on earth. At least that's what I believe. And you may as well live it to the absolute full. Katherine, thank you so much for bringing so much wisdom and so much knowledge and so many gold nuggets to us on the show here tonight.
Thank you so much, Terry. It's been such a pleasure and such an honor. Thank you. And thank you to everybody who's been watching. Thank you.